All right, this is your natal reading. First of all, thank you for supporting my channel. I really appreciate it. I put a lot of effort into my videos, so it's nice to be recognized for that effort. So let's get into your birth chart. First of all, I just want to point out that the lines you see on your chart, so in general, green means good, red means bad. Okay, that's not quite true. The red lines, to me, they signify tension. So let's see, in your chart you have a short green line between Jupiter and Uranus. That is a sextile aspect. That is a positive aspect. It's a good thing. The long green line that you see on your chart between Venus and the Moon, also the Moon and Saturn, that's a trine. That is the most positive aspect. And then you also have some of the red lines. So every birth chart, every chart ever has the long red line between the South Node and the North Node because they are opposite each other, of course. And that is in opposition. That's considered the most negative aspect, usually. And then you have the shorter red line, like you see between Mars and Jupiter in your chart. Also, the midheaven and the Moon have that short red line, and that is a square. Okay, so that is also a negative aspect. Oppositions, to me, signify tension with transformation, whereas the squares tend to represent tension more so, less on the transformative side. Okay, so let's get into this. So the first thing I thought when I looked at your chart was, God, that is a lot of Scorpio. That is very interesting. So Scorpio, let's just go through this list of planets that you have in Scorpio. Venus in Scorpio. Okay, so that I can tell you right now is an affliction in classical astrology, where because Venus's domicile is on the other side of the wheel, it's in Taurus. When she's in Scorpio, that's considered detriment. So that is not a great place for Venus to be. My mom also has Venus in Scorpio, actually. You have North Node in Scorpio. You have Mercury in Scorpio, Jupiter in Scorpio, Pluto in Scorpio. That's good. Pluto is in domicile. That's his home, is Scorpio. So Scorpio and Pluto are very similar. They both have a deepness to them. Pluto is Hades, the god of the underworld, and Scorpio is basically the same kind of energy, where it's the galactic center is actually right behind the constellation Scorpio. So a lot of people believe in the idea of the Golden Gate and the Silver Gate. I can't remember whether it's the golden one or the silver one, but basically it's where the souls of humans, the souls of everybody, enters this material plane through that galactic center that is behind Scorpio. So there's an intense otherworldly, underworldly essence to Pluto and also to Scorpio. So that is interesting. And then you have the sun in Scorpio as well. So your sun sign isn't the whole deal, right? But the sun is rules like the heart, basically, and it's kind of like where your heart is. Your heart is in those deep waters of Scorpio. There's 3 different water signs, right? Scorpio, Cancer, and Pisces. Of those 3, Scorpio has the worst reputation just for being like a very deep, very transformative kind of energy, like I said. Think of the Scorpio energy of late October and early November, right? So you were born pretty close to the cusp with Sagittarius, but not quite. So you were about 2 degrees away from being a Sagittarius. So the other thing I notice in your chart that's really interesting is that you have Mercury conjunct the North Node. That's a little weird because I just did a reading for someone who had Mercury conjunct the South Node. And if you're not familiar, so the North Node and the South Node are the head and tail of the dragon. So the North Node, the head of the dragon, represents the future. South Node represents the past. So like in the X that is reality, like magical reality, the left-hand side is the past, the right-hand side is the future, and where they meet in the middle is the present. Okay. So the fact that you have Mercury conjunct the North Node in the 11th house. So 11th house represents community. I don't always use the house system, but I have found that it is somewhat interesting. Community, friends, collective goals, that's the 11th house, and that's where you have this Mercury conjunction with the North Node. So Mercury is mind, it's also communication, right? So basically what this is saying is that you are someone who is, you can communicate the future, essentially. You might be someone who sets goals for other people. You keep the people around you moving forward, right? Instead of being stuck in the past, you are more moving those people forward. It's a pretty intense conjunction, to be honest. It's interesting. You also have another very intense conjunction in Scorpio, which is you have the Sun, the Sun, Pluto, and Jupiter all pretty much conjunct. So Pluto and the Sun are right on top of each other at 28 degrees. They're about 58 minutes apart, 60 minutes in a degree. And then you have Jupiter at 26 degrees of Scorpio. So yeah, that's a conjunction between all three of those planets. That's really interesting. So Jupiter is he rules over Christianity. He's kind of like the Christian God. He's kind of like Christ. He rules over people wearing white and abundance, and he has strong ties to royalty, as does the Sun. The Sun is actually very similar to Jupiter because, you know, in Christianity, the Son of God, right, is Christ. So that's really interesting. And again, Pluto is that intense Scorpio energy, the underworld. The signs for Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus tend to hearken more to the currents of the time that you're born in because they are such slow movers. So Pluto goes around the zodiac wheel. It takes 240 years. Okay, so he spends a lot of time in each sign. I have my Pluto in Scorpio as well. Jupiter, it takes about 12 years to get around the zodiac. He spends about a year in Scorpio, or a year per sign. And then, so Uranus is an 80-year cycle. Neptune is like 150 years, somewhere like that. So there are signs of the time that you were born in. So Hades was at home in the underworld throughout the early 90s, pretty much. It's kind of interesting to think about. So one interpretation of this that I found is that this conjunction represents like a profound hidden power with identity, which is the Sun, expansion and abundance, which is Jupiter, and transformation, the underworld of Pluto, fused in the unconscious. So that is a really intense conjunction to have in one's chart. I'm kind of curious what happened to the news right around that time, what like movies might have come out, what music might have come out at that time. It was a big year for movies and music, so music especially. So I'm kind of curious where the culture was being steered that year. That conjunction is also, you know, visionaries, healers, mystics. Yeah, so good on you. That's a cool conjunction. So the Sun and Jupiter, they're like twin aspects of the righteous father, right? They're both associated with kingship. Yeah, okay, so moving on to the moon. I really am beginning to think that the moon sign matters a lot more than people think it does. Your moon is in Cancer, which is awesome. The moon represents common people, right? It rules over common people. And the moon's domicile, its home, is Cancer. So that is a great place to have the moon in your birth chart. The fact that you have Pluto in the 12th with that intense conjunction, and you have the moon in Cancer, suggests that you may have some aptitude for magic, or you know, something of that nature, some kind of mystical ability or understanding. And your moon is also, so it's trining Venus, which is good. So that's good for Venus, because like I said, like Venus is not so happy in Scorpio. She's also retrograde in your chart. She's being given a boost by the moon. So Venus retrograde in Scorpio, that's your connection to beauty, love, art, music. It can mean, sometimes I think that it might mean like Venus in Scorpio might mean like you're never satisfied, like it's never enough. I do kind of get that sometimes with Venus and Scorpio, but I'm not sure. Another thing is that you have the moon trining Saturn, which is cool. That's a very beneficial aspect. Saturn is like the divine parent, right? Limitation, restriction, discipline. So you have that coming through. And the other thing with the moon in Cancer is that it kind of represents, I think that your moon sign might represent how other people see you and how you relate to common people, how you relate to ordinary people. So you may be very intuitive based on that placement. You may let your intuition guide you when you're dealing with other people. You let me know. I mean, this is all the stuff that like any astrologer would tell you, but the difference between me and most astrologers is that I care about being right. And then you also have the moon squaring your midheaven, which is in Libra. So the only error that you have in your chart is that you have your midheaven at 4 degrees Libra. So that was the only error that's really at an important part in your chart. You're mostly water because you have Saturn in Pisces, Moon in Cancer, and six celestial bodies in Scorpio. And then you have a little bit of Earth with the Uranus and Neptune being in Capricorn, and also South Node in Taurus. It's kind of interesting. So, but yeah, there's a lot of water in your chart, and then a tiny bit of fire with Mars. So, it's moving on to Mars here. You have Mars in Leo. Not the best, not the worst placement for Mars. And you have him squaring Jupiter, which is kind of interesting. So Jupiter is actually at home in, Mars is actually at home in Scorpio, where Jupiter is. So it's kind of like a little bit of a switch there, where they're aspecting each other, but Jupiter is in Mars' home. And then basically, that's kind of interesting because Mars forges the thunderbolts for Thor, which is Jupiter, right? So Mars is the warrior in his best incarnation. Mars is the warrior that supports Jupiter's leadership, essentially. So that you have a little bit of tension there between Mars and Jupiter. And Mars also is like the masculine part of your personality. So that's interesting. That could suggest that your will and your morality are not always so aligned. That's kind of vague. I mean, that applies to every person ever, right? But it is kind of interesting that you have Mars, this masculine energy, squaring that intense Jupiter conjunction that I talked about earlier. It also occurs to me that you have the moon trining Venus, and those are the two most feminine planets. So you have like a good balance with that feminine energy, which could be receptivity, or it could literally be your relationships with women. You're actually really close to having a 3-way trine with Moon, Saturn, and Venus. Venus and Saturn are basically in a trine, even though that green line is not on your chart, just because of where they're located. So that is really interesting when you think about it in that way. Saturn, again, being like father time, the restrictive, disciplining parent. And then Venus, the lover of beauty, and the moon, your connection to the other side, basically. Oh, another thing about your chart is that you do have the North Node conjunct Alphecca, which is the northern crown. And I don't really know too much about, I haven't connected with the northern crown personally, so I don't really know what nature it has, beyond to say that there is an element of, it's a crown, it's royal, it's something that's regal, and it kind of seems to act as an intensifier. So you have Alphecca is at 12 degrees Scorpio. Then you have 14 degrees Scorpio, your north node, and then 16 degrees Scorpio, your Mercury, your mind, your communication. So again, that is interesting aspect with the north node. You have strong north node energy and strong Scorpio energy. All right, so I talked earlier about the intensity of Scorpio and the galactic center and the golden and silver gates. You also have your ascendant at 12 degrees Sagittarius. So the stars and the actual stars, constellations, and the signs don't always line up. But you have 12 degrees Sagittarius as your ascendant. Just 2 degrees away, at 10 degrees, you have Antares. And Antares is the breast of the scorpion, the heart of the scorpion. Antares has Pluto energy, Scorpio energy, basically, where it's this deep, transformative, underworldly energy that hooks you into the other side. So despite the fact that he is in the constellation of Scorpio, he is in the sign of Sagittarius. And just a quick note on the ascendant, most people will say that your ascendant sign is how other people see you, whereas your sun sign is kind of like where your heart is. So your ascendant sign is Sagittarius. Sagittarius is adventurous, philosophical, optimistic, freedom-loving, thrives on travel, exploration, and wisdom. So that is how other people see you, according to most astrologers. Okay, so back to Antares. Antares is actually, the word Antares is anti-Aries, and Aries is Mars, essentially. Mars rules the sign Aries. Ares is like an old school spelling for Aries, and Aries and Mars are kind of like one and the same. They have very similar energy. So Antares is one of the Persian royal stars. He's the watcher of the west, the breast of the scorpion, the rival of Mars, which is interesting again because you do have that square with Mars that I was talking about between Mars and Jupiter. And then you also have Antares like basically on. So when you were born, Antares was just over the horizon. That's interesting. That really is interesting. So Antares is one of the gateways to the world of the dead. It's associated with the fall harvest, autumn equinox, which is coming up. You have that Scorpio energy of late October, early November, right? All right, so that is very interesting. I'm really of the school of thought that like you can see more. I'm not like claiming to be a psychic, you know what I mean? You can see more of what this means than I can. I've seen enough proof that it's real that I know there is something to it. But it is one of those things where it's like it's kind of for you to figure out exactly what this stuff means. I can just kind of point you in the right direction and show you what's interesting. So, all right. Thank you again for all your support. I really appreciate it. And get at me with any questions you have. If you want to talk about it, sounds good. Yeah, let me know what you think. Have a good day.